The mission of FSU Coach is to prepare and equip the next generation of coaches and sports professionals with best practices and current research to enable them to pursue excellence. We have 2 academic programs, the online graduate certificate, which is 4 classes, and also a 10-class master's in athletic coaching. Our graduate certificate and master's program can be started at any time, either the summer, fall, or spring.
The types of classes that we offer focus on the athlete as a whole person. We focus on the theory and practice, the research, the helping skills. I came to FSU Coach because I truly believed in the mission and the purpose of the program.
I think I have my dream job being a head coach at Florida State, but I know there's always more ways that I can help my athletes and better prepare as a coach. If you're interested in going into coaching or joining the FSU Coach program, I would just say don't even think about it and do it.
Well, welcome everybody to another edition of FSU Coach Live. My name is Tim Baghurst, and joining me this morning is Simon Loftus. He is a professor of coaching. He's also a volleyball coach for Team England. Well, Simon, you've done a lot. Why don't you explain a little bit of your background and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, Tim. Appreciate the opportunity to have this chat. So I guess I started playing volleyball when I was 11 years old, just as I was going into high school. My PE teacher was a national team coach at the time in Scotland, and obviously I was quite tall for my age and got selected into the high school volleyball team. And from there I had maybe 17, 18 years of playing, and towards the end of my career, I kind of got a bit disillusioned, training full time, just, it was tough mentally, physically, and I dislocated my ankle in a match, and I was out for 6 months. I was in cast, and basically I was just rethinking, was playing volleyball worth it? And just after I recovered from that, I get the opportunity to actually travel to the United States, excuse me, and I was an assistant coach at Stevens Institute of Technology in Hoboken, and that was back in 2003, and I just had such an amazing experience. When I came back to the UK, I decided I wanted to be a coach. And massive thanks to Pat Dorowolski at Stevens for lighting that fire for me and giving me the opportunity to trial and error and just use some of my playing experience and give it a go with these students at Stevens Institute. And from there, I arrived back in the UK and actually decided I was going to coach. And I was working with under 18 girls team. We just entered the National League, and it was exciting, it was good, but I don't think I was a very good coach at the time, and I was kind of finding my way. And 2 or 3 years after that, I was given the chance to coach the junior women's national team. And looking at the title of the podcast, I think I got the job because I was the only person that wanted it. I don't think I was necessarily qualified or, the best coach out there, but I wanted to do it and I wanted to take coaching seriously. And I saw that as a stepping stone. And that led me to about 2007, where I was offered the job at Leeds Beckett University to be their director of volleyball, and just had an amazing time with that. Very successful program. Cut my teeth, really invested in myself, and I started doing a master's in sports coaching to try and understand what coaching was about, and I'd kind of parked that idea of being a player. I was now a coach, and I really wanted to understand a lot of the theory and the reasons why I was doing what I was doing rather than it was just a feeling or, well, it worked for my coach that was coaching me. I was trying to draw that line and that distinction. And, while I was at Leeds, I won national championships, so the equivalent to your NCAAs. And I was promoted to coach the men's Scottish team. And we had a good European championship. But the travel back and forth to Scotland was quite difficult. And we qualified for the main European Championship, and the federation never had the money or perhaps the inclination. I don't want to be too controversial too early, but they never had the money and perhaps the inclination not to enter it. And I was kind of, well, why am I doing this? We've got to the platform where we deserve to be there. Why not take the chance? And on the back of that discussion, conversation, I decided to resign and focus my attention down in England. And round about that time, I was invited into the GB programme for the London Olympics. And I was one of the assistant coaches there. And again, a hugely invaluable and exciting, amazing experience. And, my career path was on an upward trajectory at this point. I was really excited about where things were going. And then Leeds Beckett terminated my contract and I was made redundant. And basically, the athletic department made a lot of coaches redundant. And I was kind of, what do I do now? So I decided I was going to try and coach professionally. And I got a contract in Sweden and had an amazing year there. Again, my first experience of coaching internationally in a different culture. I don't count America as a different culture because it's English and we share a lot of traits. But going to Sweden, where I didn't understand the language, didn't really understand the culture, and I was put into this team that was at the lower end of the league. So the culture around what was success and what was performance was really quite different. And it was probably my most successful year as a coach because I managed to keep the team in the league. I was amazing, immensely proud of that. We had a young team. We had a couple of Americans play. And, one of the highlights of that team was throughout the season, I had 10 different players in the squad that picked up most valuable player awards for games. And it kind of spoke to the fact that we were a team and we were greater than the sums of our parts. And we fought and we fought and we fought and we stayed in the league and I was delighted. And then the team pulled out of the league, the elite league, and they went back down to the regional leagues in Sweden. And, they either lost sponsors or it was too expensive to be in the league. So I left the program. The team went down the leagues after I thought it was a very successful year. And then I went to work for Scottish volleyball as a secondment, 6 months. And then I found myself back in the States working again at Stevens Institute of Technology, but this year for the men's program and the women's program. Again, I keep saying it was an amazing experience. It really was. The women made, I think, the Sweet 16 of the NCAAs, which was as far as they'd ever been. And the men, I picked up Assistant Coach of the Year with the AVCA. And I wanted to stay. I was desperate to stay, but my visa wasn't extended. Again, finances, third Division 3 program. they haven't got the resources to remunerate me for what the visa required, if you like. So I found myself unemployed when I returned to the UK, and basically I took a job that I wasn't sure about. It was down in London. I don't really like London, and I burnt out. I hated it. Mental health suffered. I just got married. I was living 250 miles away from my wife during the week. And I was done basically with coaching. And I got the opportunity to move into higher education. And I'm now a senior lecturer at Kingston University. Just about to submit my PhD. And that process and moving into higher education reignited my love for coaching, and I'm now the men's national team coach for England, which is culturally quite difficult for a Scotsman in England. But again, I'm blessed to work with amazing athletes, really, really keen to do the best they can do with the resources that we've got and the opportunities that we've got. And, I seem to have struck a balance between performance volleyball fix and a good career that I'm able to influence coaches that are coming through programs and hopefully the future of the sport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's, speaking as a coach educator, there's a lot of satisfaction knowing that we're influencing people who then influence many people. And there's a lot of feel good about what we do because we know we're doing good. I want to go back and just start. I want to take a few pieces from what you said, but go back to when you were an athlete. You said you were disillusioned. I'm curious about the experiences you had as a professional volleyball player. Lucrative, full-time job. What were your experiences like?
So actually, I played national team as an amateur. I wasn't a professional. And this is, hopefully it'll link. I had the opportunity to go professional 2 times. Once when I graduated from university, I had a chance to take a contract in Belgium, and I didn't think it was good enough. I genuinely didn't think it was good enough to play at that level, and I was kind of scared of going there and failing. And that has been a big motivator why, when I was a coach, any opportunities I've had that were offered to me, I was going to take. I didn't want to have that regret as a player, now as a coach. So the first contract I knocked back because I just didn't think it was good enough. And then the second time I was offered a contract in France. And at the time I'd just come back from my first experience in America. And I was in the best shape of my life. I'd been training with the guys I was coaching in America. I was in the gym every day. So I kind of was a professional because it was volleyball every day. I was training in the gym and on the court. And unfortunately, I was very much in love and decided not to go because I didn't want to leave my partner at the time. And obviously that didn't work out and it was a regret. But the timing wasn't right. But as a player playing for the national team, I had a 9-to-5 job, if you like. I was training with a club at night, and we played National League in Scotland at the weekends. So it was amateur mentality. In Scotland, we don't have a professional league. In England, we can maybe come on to that, it's kind of different because of the university structure. But no, I was an amateur, and I had to have a job around to pay the bills, and the volleyball was a enjoyable hobby, if you like.
Yeah, it's interesting when we talk about volleyball, especially in the United States. It's a big deal, and it's an Olympic sport, and many people are interested in it. It's a worldwide sport, and then we go, well, how's Simon going to compete against other countries representing Scotland or Great Britain, where these other countries have professional leagues, they have professional players, they do it for a living, and then you're doing a 9 to 5 and trying to piece together some kind of competency as a side job, so to speak. I suspect that that's one of the frustrations that you have, whether it be working in Scotland or whether it be working in England, that you aren't given the tools and resources to compete at that level. Even as you said, which I was shocked to hear, your national organization won't send you to the European Championships. Talk a little bit about kind of that. Well, that's why we titled this, It's Not That Glamorous. It really hasn't been for you. So how do you navigate that? It must be incredibly frustrating to not have the resources you need to actually compete with everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, in my sort of intro that I kind of alluded to, the motivating factor is my players. I've got an incredible bunch of guys. I've got an incredible staff that work with me, and they keep me motivated to try and do the best we can. And over the last 3 years, coming out of COVID, I guess, we've been able to create some opportunities for the players. We went to Slovakia for 7 days, and we were playing against professional teams there. We've been to Korea. We played a tournament out in Korea, and we finished third there. We played UC Irvine when we were out there. We played the Vietnamese national team, the Korean national team, Japanese national team. And, the guys have to pay for it to be there, but they're never going to get this experience just waiting on the call that we, all of a sudden the federation's found a couple of $100,000 to be able to go and enter a tournament.
So the players had to pay their own way to these tournaments?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm a volunteer coach. I'm not remunerated for my time. Again, I've got a good salary from working at a university, so the money is not important. But yeah, we do. I mean, we played a tournament in Denmark this August, and we played Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, all of whom had been in camp for 6 to 8 weeks in preparation. And I had 6 days, and guys are working, they haven't got time. We struggle to get access to facilities. And, we went there and we competed pretty good. We lose 3-0 to Denmark and Sweden, and we lose 3-1 to Norway. But
it's got to be frustrating, Simon, knowing that really you're going to these events, dare I say, as the whipping boys, right? You're the add-ons to the teams that do this and are expecting to beat you, almost as if in college American football, there are teams that go to play other teams basically to get paid because they know they're not going to do well. And as a coach, we're all very proud of what we do. We're proud of our players. We want the best for them. And looking from the outside in, I would be going to these tournaments if only we had. And I would be quite frustrated, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean, being frustrated isn't going to change the dynamic. So we've got a maxim the team's adopted, and it's called kicking doors down.
Mm.
So if you knock on the door and are polite and say, can we have, the answer is always going to be no. But if you kick the door down and take it, then people need to take note of what you're doing. So 3 years ago, we went to a tournament in Luxembourg, and like you say, we were the whipping boys. We finished last. This last December, we went back to this tournament and we won it. And we beat Luxembourg for the first time in, I'll say 15 years, but that's not exaggerating too much. But it's the first time we beat Luxembourg, who at the time were ranked 40th in the world, 45, and we're ranked 130th or something. So this is us kicking the door down. We're demonstrating to people that we are serious and that we are trying to do as well as we can do. And, you know, beating Luxembourg is a statement one. Going to South Korea and competing with these teams and finishing third in the tournament is shown that we can compete with these teams. Going to Denmark, Denmark beat us up. We were a bit rabbits in the headlights, I guess. We competed good with Norway. And then for phases, we competed quite well with Sweden, but ultimately they were better. So, like, to use the American football analogy, it's like Kansas City playing the Cleveland Browns. I'm a Browns fan.
I'm sorry.
The Browns might have one good quarter, but Kansas City are going to win. And everybody knows that. So we go with our expectations, but in 3 years' time, we want to be going there and contesting championships and not being the whipping boys. So I see it as step by step. You know, we tick off boxes and move forward. And undoubtedly, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark were like, who are these guys at the start of the tournament? But at the end of the tournament, I think we showed that at times we could play good volleyball. So we've got more guys out playing professional in Europe. So we've got 5 or 6 guys playing out of the 14. And we've got some guys that are in good programs at universities here in the UK, which means they train every day. And we've imported some good American players that are doing postgraduates and stuff like that. So the standard's a bit higher domestically. We're lucky we've got some really good European players, Polish, Slovaks, Greeks, that are adding to the strength of the league. So, you know, step by step. So if I had a short-term approach, yeah, I'd be really frustrated. But ultimately, when I retire or resign or I'm fired, I'm hoping that the program's in a better place than I found it.
Well, we're speaking with Simon Loftus. If you're watching live, have a question, just put it in your chat box, comment box, wherever you're watching from. I want to go back. One of the things that I've been particularly interested in over the last couple of years is coach pay. And you yourself said you're a volunteer coach, and that's the case for many, many coaches. Perhaps less so at the international level, perhaps less so at the international level in a Western society. And so that's fairly surprising to me. And I'm curious about this because you talk about almost trying to professionalize the volleyball team, the organization, etc. So is there a perception that because Simon isn't paid, we're not going to take volleyball seriously? Whereas if, I don't know if it's Sport England or someone else, if Sport England are paying you, is there more of a, we're going to invest in this, as opposed to, well, he's not even paid, so this can't be serious, this can't be real? How do you maybe navigate that in a sense whereby, I'm sure you don't want to be a volunteer forever. I don't think you should be, given that the role that you have. How do you legitimize your position with an organization to say, you know what, I'm the work I'm doing here, spend countless hours doing it. No, there needs to be some kind of funding for me and also for my team, because I know a lot of volunteer coaches out there, it's almost seen as almost a rite of passage, where you're doing it because no one else will, or you're doing it because you have a stake or a love of the game, etc. Well, yes, but that doesn't mean that you should be doing it for free. So I'm just curious your thoughts, because I remember when we spoke a few weeks ago, I was very surprised by that, of just, really, England volunteer? No, can't be.
So I'll start this by saying that this Corinthian, higher, altruistic view of sport that has come from volunteerism is a disaster. I think it's disgusting. And I think in the UK particularly, that governing bodies and sports clubs manipulate, is maybe a strong word, manipulate the goodwill of people in the sport. And I actually think volunteerism's holding back the sport, particularly here in the UK. There's always money for administrators, and there's not money for coaches. And every time there's a round of funding from either UK Sport or Sport England, the organisations that get more money inherently employ more administrators.
And I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've also heard that England, especially with the Olympics, there's kind of an emphasis of, if you're not going to win medals at the Olympics, we're not going to invest as much in you. And I feel like that's a very short-sighted view, given that it is very temporal, in the sense that it really depends on the athletes you have at that time. And you will never get medals in the Olympics if you don't get any funding. I think that's pretty obvious. If there's no funding to support athletes and to support coaches, well, we might as well give up on this sport. And I think that's a very short-sighted view made by people who maybe aren't coaches.
Yeah, but a lot of these people that are making those decisions are drawing down six-figure salaries to make those decisions. Meanwhile, the guys at the hard end, they're left without the resource. I mean, I completely agree. The funding, so in continental Europe, a lot of sports, if it's an Olympic sport, you get funded from your government. So take Luxembourg as an example. The very small country, they have realistically no chance of qualifying for the Olympics. But the Luxembourg Olympic Committee resource Luxembourg volleyball pretty well. They've got their own Olympic centre. They've got a beautiful gymnasium. They've got a stadium that holds 2,000 people for the matches that we've been there. It's fabulous. and they get to play European and World Championship qualifiers, no problem, not in question. And admittedly, well, I was going to say Luxembourg's quite a rich country, but it's not richer than UK. And every 4 years, every quad, they have a funding review. Have you hit your medal target? Yes or no? You're going to get an improvement or a decline in the amount of funding. And for the likes of volleyball, coming from Europe, it's impossible to qualify for the Olympics based on a 4-year plan. Mm-hmm. We need to look at 16, 20 years. And it's just not the way it's going to be funded. And all I can do is keep the players engaged in the process and keep them understanding that, you're part of the pathway. It's this idea of standing on the shoulders of giants. The next generation will be in a better position than you are, but you need to do the dirty work. And if I can get all 14 of my players contracts, then, I'm quite happy with that. But going back to your point about a validation of my role, it's a difficult one because ultimately, if I walk away, and this is maybe where the governing bodies have got you by the throat. If I walk away, they'll get somebody else.
Yeah.
And if I walk away, are they really bothered about the talent drain and the knowledge drain that goes with me? And, well, it doesn't matter because you're not playing European Championships or World Championships, and we'll get somebody else to do it. And
I think that's the problem. The problem is, as you just said, somebody else will step in and be a volunteer, and they will take advantage of that volunteerism as long as they can, and then move on to the next person. And maybe that volunteer gets burned out or is working a second job to make ends meet, and I just can't sustain it. And Simon, you're speaking as from your experience. I'm speaking from my experience too, where I went through the same experience where I can't keep doing this. It's too much. And so I resigned and they moved on to the next person who, maybe in a better, I don't know, time management situation to the job that I have. And the organization moves on. I just feel at some point, coaches need to stop doing this and need to stop saying, no, what I do is not volunteerism. I'm not a charity. We're doing something for our nation. We're doing something for, in many ways, people profit from what we do, right? Even the administrators profit from what you do. And so eventually, somewhere, somehow, coaches will need to stand up and say, enough's enough. We're a profession. We're professional. We should, I'll rephrase, we should be professional. Let's assume we are, because there's a lot of coaches who are not. We're not doing this for nothing or peanuts anymore. This is a career. This is a full-time job, or could be. So yeah, thank you for sharing that piece. It's often talked about off air, but not often on air. And so I really appreciate you sharing that. I want to be respectful of your time. So if you wouldn't mind, just kind of close out the show. You've coached in a variety of countries. You've worked with a variety of people. You've coached men as well as women. What advice would you like to pass on to maybe the next generation of coaches?
Well, the thing I always say is invest in yourself. Take the time to learn more about the craft. there's a fine line between the art and the science, and I think it's good to know both. Like the more technology comes into sport, the easier it is to go away from the eye test or the gut, and that's the sort of art, I guess. But you're only going to get that if you create opportunities for yourself. And I would say to every coach out there that's taking it seriously and wants to pursue it as a career is, seek out opportunities, work with the best people you can, and create opportunities for yourself. I mean, I got involved with a GB program just by a phone call and an email saying, "Can I come and watch your practice?" And the answer was yes, and I was there. And then at the end of that session, it was, "Can I come back next week?" Yes. And after 2 or 3 weeks, the coach was like, "Stop asking, you come whenever you want." And I was like, "Oh, I can come tomorrow then?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course." So I was there the next day because I was wanting to learn and I was wanting to immerse myself in that sort of environment. And, one thing I'm really bad at is self-promotion. And, I should maybe have an agent, going to the previous part of the conversation. I need to get myself an agent to make sure I'm paid for things. But I haven't got one. And, perhaps I've missed out on opportunities. But at the same time, I do the sport because I love it. And I want the players to experience some of the things I've experienced as a player and as a coach. And it's maybe a bit altruistic, but I think, there's more to life than money. And, with it comes a lot of pluses, but there's a lot of negatives as well. Mm-hmm. And, perhaps if I was getting paid a good salary from Volleyball England, I would need a lot more accountability than I do. And, it's a balancing act, really. But coaches, pursue your dreams. Never let somebody tell you no. If they tell you no, go and prove them wrong. And, every opportunity to learn is a blessing. So I think you need to take ownership and control of your own learning, and your own destiny. Don't wait for somebody to offer you something. Take it and kick the door down, like I said earlier.
If somebody has a question for you, maybe they're watching on our podcast later, or listening on our podcast rather, or watching on YouTube, email a good way for them to reach you?
Yeah, of course. There you go. Shared it. Thanks.
Yeah. For those listening to the podcast, s.loftus, Loftus, at kingston.ac.uk. Well, Simon, thanks again for sharing a little bit about your life and career. I hope those listening take your advice. Just a reminder, everybody, we try to do these during the academic year, at least once every couple of weeks. So be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spotify podcast, wherever you're watching or listening. But on behalf of myself, Tim Baghurst, and Simon Loftus, thanks so much for watching.